Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Fireside Open Science chat. My name is Cameron Riddell, and I am joined by Dr. Marc Kutchner. And today we're going to talk about Dr. Kuchner's experience at NASA and with citizen science. But before we begin, I have a few announcements that I would like to make to everyone listening in on today's chat. We have two ways that you can participate in our chat. First, we have opened up the Q&A. So if you're joining from Zoom, you'll want to open up that Q&A widget if you have any question that you would like Dr. Kuchner to address. And additionally, we also have opened up the chat widget. Now, with both of these widgets in mind, I want to make sure that you are all aware that this chat, I should say, will be recorded, edited, and posted online. So I want you all to be conscious of the information that you may inadvertently share when asking questions or participating in the chat. Additionally, I want to advocate for an open science event that Dr. Marc Kutchner has shared with us. I'll go ahead and paste that event in the chat. We'll also remind you that this is happening at the end of today's session, and I would love to hear a few words from Marc as well on what this event is. Now, let's go ahead and introduce our person of the hour. Dr. Marc Kutchner is an astrophysicist and the Citizen Science Officer for NASA's Science Mission Directorate. He oversees a portfolio of more than 30 NASA-funded participatory science projects, reaching millions of volunteers. Marc received his bachelor's degree in physics from Harvard and his PhD in astronomy from Caltech, and then studied at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics as a Michelson Fellow at the Princeton University as a Hubble Fellow as well. Kuchner is also known for his optical inventions, which are used in the Webb telescope. And Marc, you linked it in the chat, an absolute plethora of a resume or CV. So Marc, could you join us on camera and on audio? Because I know that our audience would love to get to know you from yourself. So Marc, do you have a couple of things that you want to share with our audience today?
Hi, Cameron. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here among fellow open science, citizen science, and participatory science enthusiasts. And yeah, I just want to say that you're all my favorite people. Not only are you science whizzes, but you're also keen on opening up the doors and collaborating with everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're here to break down barriers. We're here to advocate on behalf of open science and participation in science and broadening what that means, because historically, participation in science is very narrow, right? But Marc, please go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say, not if we have anything to do with it. I'm going to change that.
Absolutely. So
Right.
Marc, I have a list of questions here for you. And I was wondering, we're going to start a little bit general, a little bit about your experiences, and then go a little bit more in depth with the topics. Now, for our audience out there, if you have any questions that you want to hear us talk about, then please do use that Q&A widget. But with that being said, Marc, I'll go ahead and share my screen. So behind me, you'll see my screen. I'll hide in the corner over here so our audience can see the question as we talk about it. And let's jump into our first one. And I'm curious, can you share with us a little bit about your journey from studying physics at Harvard to becoming the Citizen Science Officer at NASA? What did this journey look like, and how did you make it? It feels like a small transition, but I'm sure it was very large.
Sure. Well, it started out on, the well-worn path of college to graduate school to applying for postdocs and then the job circuit as a scientist, academia, national laboratories, all that jazz. I think probably the weirdest, most interesting part of the journey was getting into citizen science in the first place. So that happened to me. Do you remember in 2008, there was this big crash of the economy?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So at the time, I had just started as a staff scientist at the Goddard Space Flight Center. And so I just jumped from being a postdoc who was desperately trying to find jobs
Yeah.
to someone that people went to looking for advice on how to find their jobs, which is sort of ridiculous if you think about it, right?
It's
Um,
really funny how at one point you feel like you're not the expert, and then you're just put onto the spot and you're like, I have to be the expert. And then over time, you become you, right? You become that expert, that resource that people trust.
exactly. So I was sort of put under the gun, and I felt like I had to collect some meaningful advice. So I embarked on a journey to learn about uh, how scientists can better communicate their work and excite other people about their work and improve their careers in the process. And I ended up writing a book about all different kinds of marketing of science.
Mm. Hmm.
In the process of writing that book, I interviewed people said, well, you should probably interview someone from Zooniverse, which of course is this big citizen science community.
Yeah.
So I called up Chris Lintott and Kevin Shawinski, who had together founded Galaxy Zoo back in 2006. And I said, tell me what you guys have been up to. And listening to them, I got so excited because they were just checking all the boxes in terms of what I was trying to learn about marketing, about building communities,
Mm.
about Web 2.0, about co-creating with your audience. And all of those ideas in sort of Web 2.0 marketing that were that were going around.
Hmm.
And um, that was what I was into at that moment. And so I decided after talking to them, well, heck, um, I've got to reflect on my own interests. I got to try to build a Zooniverse project just so I can get into this, right?
Yeah.
So I scraped up some ideas for what kinds of Zooniverse projects I could do and put together this project called Disk Detective.
Hmm.
And that was what started me on my citizen science journey.
Wow. So just hands on the wheel, just moving forward. Did you know at the time that you were kind of at the forefront of this incredible movement that has just expanded, since then?
Yeah, I mean, I was a couple years behind Galaxy Zoo, right?
Hmm.
And Clickworkers and Stardust at Home and Project Sungrazer
Hmm.
and all of that stuff. But it was still, I think riding a kind of wave.
Hmm.
And the I got bitten by the bug. Um, I mean, what happened was that we put all this data online,
Hmm.
and I thought, okay, this will just be kind of a lark, right?
Yeah. You put it
So
up there, you don't expect anyone to really do much with it, and you say,
who knows what'll
yeah,
happen? You
could be
throw
fun.
cast it out on the waters, right? And um, the amazing thing happened. About a month after the project launched, I started getting these emails. Dear investigators, I'm starting to see the same subject appear over and over on my screen. Can you fix this problem? Signed, Artman.
Hmm.
Because Artman is not, I don't know this person by name, right? I only know
Yeah.
his ID, right? So I make some inquiries. It turns out the reason this is happening is that Artman has classified every single bit of data that we put on the site. If you do that, it starts repeating the old ones.
Oh.
So not only not only had he combed through every single bit of data that was online, it was supposed to last for a year,
Hmm.
but he was had an amazing memory. He knew that he was repeating them.
Wow.
Either that or he'd marked all 30,000 of them up
Yeah.
somehow. But whatever it did, his accomplishment was just off the charts in my mind.
Hmm.
So then I figured, okay, well, Art Man is special, he's works, I think he worked for the post office
Yeah,
in the
I was
child
just about to ask, was this was a citizen scientist or was this, some
citizen
PhD or
scientist.
postdoc? That is amazing.
So I figured, okay, we got like the Wonderkin, the Luke Skywalker, the one super special gifted citizen scientist. And then the other emails start rolling in. Dear investigators, are the subjects are repeating themselves. Dear investigators.
That's just amazing. So then
Yeah.
you kind of took this, you went forward, and then it became your career, or it is your career, and then now you end up at NASA doing amazing things, advocating for open science or citizen science, I should say, more specifically. Now, Mark, I do have, like I said, more questions for you, but we did just get one in from the Q&A. Now, this takes
Sure.
us a little bit topically pretty quickly, but I figured it's a fairly relatively short question, but I'd love to address it now. And the question is, what are the forms of citizen science and how can someone participate? Can you list a couple of ways?
Oh, sure. Well, one of the ways is one that I mentioned, right? So
Mhm,
all these projects where scientists will put data online, and it might be in the form of little images, little videos, little bits of audio, um, things data that you can mark up or classify or answer questions about. And you can go in and help analyze, comb through the data in this way. Another popular way is to go out and take your own data.
mhm,
So, for example, there are all these wonderful citizen science apps, right, on your cell phone. Like here's the Globe Observer app, which is NASA sponsored citizen science project. It's actually a series of citizen science projects. There's one about clouds, one about mosquito habitats, one about land cover, one about trees. And essentially, with these projects, you're going to go out into the world and find something and take a picture of it.
mhm.
And then maybe add some more data, maybe answer some more questions about it, and upload that into a database, which then gets shared with scientists and with the world. And then there's yet another way, which is that the tasks that science team asks the public to do
Mhm.
are often just the beginning of a citizen science collaboration. So when when the science teams get to know their participants, as we started getting to know the disc detectives, then amazing things happen. And people start side projects. Uh, Participants get involved in writing papers. So we've had now more than 500 citizen scientists who have become co-authors of papers, refereed scientific papers, as a
Mhm.
result of their involvement in NASA citizen science. Uh, and often they'll end up shaping the direction of the project and taking it in directions that nobody thought of. And I have lots of great examples of that too.
Yeah, I would love to hear one
Yeah.
because that's the thing I love about, lowering barriers for others to participate is you get perspectives and ideas that you just simply would not have heard or come up with yourself otherwise. So yeah, please do share.
Well, Maria just put a great example in the chat. So the Burst Chaser project is a project where the science team of the project is mostly composed of citizen scientists. So Amy Lean is the PI of the project, and she wanted help from citizen scientists who had experience on other projects. So she drafted them to be her team building the project. And they literally went in and created the elements of the project and tested them out together and helped apply for grants. And I'm sure they'll be helping write papers as well.
Hmm.
I mean, who knew that was even possible,
No,
years ago?
no. I feel
So
like
you
whenever
could,
I'm writing a grant, I'm just on my own, right? Isolated in a bubble, just writing. Who would have thought that there would be a team of people or teams of people, right, out there willing who will contribute their time to advancing science for the pure sake of either curiosity or science in itself.
Yeah, yeah. Who knew there was so much passion,
Amazing.
and how motivating that can be for everybody when you
Yeah.
get together around a science question.
Yeah. It does. It really makes science feel more like like, not a, I don't want to say culture. I feel like there's already an academic culture, but it just feels like such a more welcoming and inviting space, right, to disseminate ideas or talk about working with data sets and things like that.
I think of it sort of like a banquet where everyone's in the kitchen. It's like Friendsgiving, where everyone's like
Yeah.
bring a dish and they're like, "Oh, I'll bring the peas, bring your favorite dessert." And then like, yeah.
Yeah. Citizen science is a potluck.
As a
I love
potluck.
that. I love that.
That's right.
All right. We have another question in the chat. It's a little bit more topical, so we'll hold on to that one. Let's jump into what we have next here on our slide. And this is out of curiosity, you spoke about this a little bit, but I'm curious, what inspired your transition from traditional research to a focus on participatory science? Was it just purely 2008 was rough?
Oh, yeah. So that was how I first learned about citizen science.
Hmm.
And then the experience I described of meeting uh, Artman and all the other amazing volunteers that followed was what changed my mind. I could say a little more about that. So
Yeah.
so we started hearing from folks who had completed the task that was on Zooniverse. So we thought, hey, let's see if we can meet these people, just have a discussion with them, and maybe instead of just having this kind of wall between us, maybe we can get to know them a little bit more. So we reached out and we got everybody together who possibly could on a Zoom call.
Hmm.
So now we've got all these people from around the world who English isn't even necessarily their first language, right? And we get them together and we go, oh my gosh, here we are. Hi, who are you? And we just kind of stare at each other for a bit. And it's awkward at first,
Hmm.
but then we're like, well, okay, what should we do? Let's go to the website and start looking at objects together. Let's just do some science, right? So
Yeah.
we go on, and all of a sudden, it's like we've known each other for our whole lives. We're just digging into all the questions. You know, people are just they're really friendly to each other. They're enthusiastic, and we're just making friends with people all around the world. And I think what really convinced me, okay, so as a scientist, there are lots of times when you go and you're like having fun, right? But you have to be serious, right? As well. It's not all meant to be fun and games.
Hmm.
Um, but I think what the moment I realized that, hey, really this is really getting the job done, right? Was when we had an observing proposal that was due. So at Disk Detective, the goal was try to find these young stellar objects, these objects that have disks around them, stars with disks around them, because the
Hmm.
disks are what it stands for. So we started finding them. We wanted to get more data on them. To get more data, you've got to apply for telescope time. And that means writing a proposal and getting it in by a due date.
Yeah.
Due date rolls around. Uh, hits us sooner than we realize. Oh
Yeah.
shoot, it's due like Thursday, right? We've got to prepare all the stuff for it. What objects should we observe? We need to do some basic research on them. So we go, oh shoot, wait a minute. We've got this amazing team out there that loves to work on us and who is interested in these objects. Could we ask them for help writing the proposal?
Oh,
We
wow.
didn't have much choice. We weren't going to get it done on time unless we got some kind of help. So we said to everybody, to all of our team of super users, can you send us your favorite targets and also answer all these questions about it? Because you got to say, like, what are the coordinates? How bright is it in these different bands? What other research has been done on the object? You got to look all this stuff up. You're writing an observing proposal. There's a lot of certain amount of rigor that has to go into that, right?
Yeah.
We said, here's what you got to do. You'll find this in this catalog, this in this catalog, this in this catalog. It's all the professional literature. It's all full of jargon. Good luck. And they ran with it. And long story short, we won the observing time because
Wow.
of their contributions.
That's amazing. And just to build on that, I'm curious, how has your or others' collaboration in creating proposal? Is it always kind of the scientist sends out questions, gathers information, or has it changed, or are there other processes also?
How's say it one more time for me?
The collaboration between yourself and the citizen scientists, right? It sounded like to put together the proposal, you sent out a bunch of questions as well as relevant metadata or data sovereignty there. They answered them, and then you stitch the proposal back together from all of those kind of highlights that they shared?
So they crafted the list of objects, the
Yeah,
heart of the proposal, a list of the
yeah,
objects that we were going to look at with the telescope, together with all the information that would be needed to observe them. And
excellent.
then we we wrote a couple paragraphs at the beginning and the end explaining why you should do it, and we submitted it.
Oh, wow. That's much more than I was expecting. That's amazing that you just kind
Yeah.
of you said here's what this team or our team of individuals have found, right?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
not editing, modifying, we just pre-text, post-text, submit. And that's amazing. You won the observing time for that.
Yeah.
That's inspirational right there. Wow. All right.
It gets
Now,
it.
yeah,
I have so many stories. I'll tell you what happened next if you want.
please do. Please do.
You're not going to be able to shut me up, essentially. I hope you've
No,
gotten. I hope you've
no,
gotten
please.
that
I
impression.
at least at the very least, I find your stories have been fascinating so far, and I know our audience has too. So if you have stories, please.
So telescopes, right? In order to see, there's stars in the northern hemisphere and stars in the southern hemisphere, and you can't see the ones in the south from standing in the north. You can't see the ones in the north from an observatory in the south. You have to, if you want to observe stars that are all around the sky, you need at least one telescope up here and one telescope down there. So we get some time first on telescope in the northern hemisphere, and then we think, how are we going to get the ones in the southern hemisphere? We're having this discussion in our science team call, and we've got a bunch of our advanced users, our citizen scientists, are on the call. And one of them says, there's a telescope in my country that's got the instrument you need. I go, okay, great. Too bad I don't know any astronomers.
Yeah.
I have access to telescopes in Chile through NASA. It's just not something that we have access to. No problem. I will drive downtown and knock on the door of the scientists of the astronomy department at the University of Cordoba, and I'll see what I can find out. Next week, our volunteer comes back. Guess what? I met these folks at the University of Cordoba, and they'd love it if you applied for time on their observatory. Just send the target list in.
Wow.
And next thing you know, we've got our southern hemisphere objects covered.
That's amazing. You don't even see that level of collaboration of
Among
scientists
professional
worldwide.
scientists. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
It's really next level collaboration. This is the embodiment of what we want open science to be for everyone. And you're living it right now. And you've been living it for a long time.
Uh, that's how I prefer to do it now. I,
Yeah.
I sometimes refer to regular science. I feel sad for scientists who don't get to experience this. I
Mm.
sometimes call them hermitian scientists, kind of like they're hermits.
Yeah. Yeah. They live in their bubble in their fields and
Exactly.
all
Exactly.
the ideas are theirs.
If you're not doing this, you're missing out, is how I
Yeah.
feel.
Now, to follow up on some of the collaboration question you have, we have another great question in the Q&A. and it reads, how do we ensure collaboration between different citizen scientists on online platforms like Zooniverse besides forums? And so I think the question is asking, how do you stay in touch, right? Scientists and citizens, and how do you get those groups to intermix even more?
Yeah. So creating collaboration opportunities, obviously, huge part of the game here, right? You'd like for volunteers to meet one another. You'd like for scientists to meet volunteers. That's really a large part of my job. And I couldn't say that I ensure it by any means. I just try to make it happen, you know.
Yeah.
So I reach out to scientists. I go to professional meetings. So, for example, I'm going to the Division of Planetary Sciences meeting October 6th. I'm going to Idaho. We're going to have a special session on citizen science there, a splinter session. If anyone's going to be in Boise next week, drop me a line. Um, so that's where all the planetary scientists are going to hang out. So I'm going to hopefully bring some more of them into the fold. Um, and I work with citizen scientists every chance I get. So, for example, we have a couple of events that we're planning now with the SciStarter community, which are going to, at this particular events are for veterans, service members, veterans, and their families, to try to encourage them to get more involved in our existing NASA citizen science projects. And just reaching out to different communities in different ways and encouraging them to get involved. Also, I spend a fair bit of my time communicating about the projects that we have going on. So
Mhm.
we have um, comms professionals at NASA who tweet and they post on Facebook. I write articles for the NASA Citizen Science pages. Um, we have email lists. So we're just always trying to spread the word and connect, connect, connect.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's really function. It's really funny you mentioned that because I've been doing open science trainings at universities for the past year, and
yeah.
the biggest thing that I'll do for a university is I'll often get somebody messaging me and say, "Oh, I work for the library at the university. Can I say something to let all these students know about these resources?" And you give them 3 minutes of airtime, and then all of a sudden these students are like, wait a minute, we have a open data repository as part of our library? I had no idea. And I think it's astonishing the connections that people should have, but they need somebody like yourself to kind of put them together to make collaboration actually happen.
It's tricky because, we make circles of friends. It's just sort of human nature, right?
Yeah.
And we have all of our own different keywords that we discover things under. I mean, you could do, you could go to 100 open science events and miss the ones on participatory science, right? If you just
Hmm.
the wrong keyword and show up with the wrong, not wrong. I mean, it's also good, but
Yeah.
you can easily miss each other.
Fantastic. Well, Mark, earlier you mentioned some of the projects that are ongoing. So I did want to formally ask you if you could describe just a couple of the key participatory science projects currently under NASA's portfolio. And not that you have, I understand it's like picking your favorite child, right? Impossible to do, but just pick one that you like a lot, if there are any.
Oh, sure. Um, so I've mentioned a few. I mean, my favorite ones are often the most recent ones. So we just launched one this week, which is called, here, I'm putting our various social media feeds in the chat.
Perfect.
People can stay up to date on the latest scuttlebutt. So there's one that we just launched this week that I've got to brag about. It's called Exo-Asteroids. It's a Zooniverse project. Probably about a third of our projects are on Zooniverse. Zooniverse is a big partner of ours. So Exo-Asteroids is about the future of the sun solar system in a weird way.
Mm. Hmm.
So, as you know, um, time goes by, 5 billion years of time go by. The Earth, the sun, turns into first it swells up into a red giant, devours a bunch of planets, then it shrinks back down again to a white dwarf. And but there's in the process of doing that, it kind of shreds all of the small body belts, asteroids and comets in our solar system get messed up. And some of them get flung into near the white dwarf. And
Mm.
so we've seen these white dwarfs that are surrounded by clouds of dust, kind of more like rings of dust or more like Saturn's rings. So those are the remnants of planetary systems that got that 5 billion years and their time was up. So um, a project is to look for these clouds of asteroids and dust around white dwarfs.
Hmm.
And so it's a little spooky, right? I mean, it's a good one for Halloween, I think, right? Because you're looking at these ghosts of planetary systems past. But that has a certain appeal.
Yeah.
You get to look at images. I mean, it's always kind of I don't know, maybe relaxing to look at astronomical images. And you're looking for objects that are getting brighter and dimmer in these images. That's pretty fun.
Yeah. And so, Mark, I think that does a fantastic job of actually leading us right into the next question here. And that was, what role does citizen science play in NASA's broader goals? So now that we've talked about some project specifics, what does NASA see that maybe other organizations don't hear?
That's a great question. And I'm not sure I have a super clear answer to that one. So, um, I mean, I'll tell you what I'd like to see and what
Yeah.
do see happening, right? What I see happening is that the amount of data that's out there is growing exponential, right? So, um, it's commonplace for NASA to launch a mission and for it to come back with billions of sources, a catalog of billions of things. Whether they're a billion stars, whether it's a billion images of the Earth, whether it's whatever it is, everything seems to come in catalogs of billions of things. So, when you start looking at just these vast wildernesses of data like that, it's just it takes a lot of minds. It takes a lot of human curiosity to figure out what that's all about. And everyone knows that the best science is not what you think you're doing. It's not what you if you knew what to look for when you went in, you're
Yeah.
not make that's not the really big discovery there. The really big discovery happens when you spot something that changes your picture of what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's something that, you know, you can write software and the software will do what you tell it to, right? Whether it's machine learning or AI.
Hmm.
Who cares what software tool it is? It will do what you tell it to do. It will look for what you want it to look for.
Yeah.
But humans can be curious and humans can pivot. And the more humans you put on the data, the more actual science you're going to do, more actual paradigm shifts you're going to be able to make.
Yeah. I
So
think
I
that's
think we're
such a
just
that's
growing
such
more and more dependent on recruiting human power.
yeah. And I think that's such a good point because all the models, whatever you end up using, they are built on top of assumptions, which are based on what we think we already know,
Exactly.
right? And so we need space for that extra exploration, that extra human factor. And citizen science is a great way of reaching that.
Exactly.
Phenomenal. So NASA's
That,
definitely
and that's
ahead of the
just one
curve. Yeah.
direction to go. I could have said there's a whole other set of goals about including people, right? About
Mhm.
inclusion and diversity and creating opportunities, uh,
Mhm.
which are also part of NASA's values, uh, which I think we've only just scratched the surface of what's possible there too.
Absolutely. And I think making the data that you work with publicly available is the first and most important, right, step. Now, I do
Yeah,
have
I
a,
mean, you make science open, right?
mhm,
And then every time you open something up, it lets citizen science build on that, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was going to say we have a specific question about data that we'll get to in just a minute because I want to stay a little bit at the high level for now. And I'm curious, how has the role of a citizen scientist evolved or changed over time? And how do you see it continuing to change? Maybe take a guess into the future.
Good, good. Of course, there are many roles for a citizen scientist, right?
Yeah.
And one of the fun things going on is that new roles are emerging, right? So you think back to click workers, which
Hmm.
was you put pictures of some cratered surface on the screen and people just have to count them. You do what they're told, right?
Yeah.
Um, Compare that to a project like Burst Chaser, where the role of citizen scientist is invent the project, run the project, lead it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that evolution from do the grunt work I tell you to you're in charge, um, that's a exciting development that's um, I'm just seeing more and more of. Another project that launched just last week, there's
Yeah.
this project called Eclipsing Binary Patrol, which is the second project I've seen, actually, maybe the third project now, like Burst Chaser, where the science team is the volunteers.
Wow.
It's got Veselin Kostov as the PI,
Uh-huh.
but everybody else on the team was a volunteer for another project.
Oh, wow. That's the cross-pollination that you're getting with the it's unheard of, honestly.
Yeah,
And it is
yeah.
truly remarkable and truly something special.
So those roles, um, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Also,
So it
the
sounds,
kind of tasks
yeah.
that people are able to contribute to, I had no idea was going to be so broad, right? So I mentioned some of the kinds of tasks that people do, but um, I didn't mention that a lot of citizen scientists turn out to be powerful communicators. So
Uh-huh.
they'll make videos and help mentor other volunteers. They'll make artwork, which I've seen used in press releases. So whenever there's a
Wow.
citizen science team that's got a big result, right?
Yeah.
They say, I say, hey, does anyone on your team an artist? And they always say, oh, come to think of it, someone is. I bet they could make a really good image. There's always somebody on a citizen science team who's also a really cool has a really cool art talent. Uh,
Mhm. Just a variety of skills, right? Things that, and it's just the project that you're working on is the one common thread. But aside
yeah,
from that, right, every person has their individual hobbies, life, things that they enjoy, but they all enjoy this, and they can take and contribute all of those other things that they've learned back into the project.
right. And they do. They do.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, Mark, I am curious. What advice would you give to someone who's interested in getting involved in NASA's participatory science projects? Say it's my first project, I've never participated before. What's kind of the maybe three bullet points you would tell me to keep an eye out for or be watchful for?
Well, first of all, I have to say, wait, I'm a drummer too. Disha's a drummer. Hi. That's awesome. Um, um, so we so first go to that web page that I put in there, right? And we've
Hmm.
got all of our active projects online there. And we also have on that page projects that have been translated into other languages that can help more people get involved. And we also have on that page you can go from that page to the projects, or most of the projects now have summary pages, which give
Mm.
more information that you might use. Like, say you're staring at all 31 of our active projects, wondering which one to do. You can click on the summary page and it'll tell you, how long does it take to get started, what materials might you need, Are there any other requirements? Like, do you have to be located somewhere where there's snow? Um, are you going to need your own telescope? Right. So we've got all that information collected on that summary page, and that
Hmm.
can help you choose. Awesome.
Amazing. The audience loved that one. So, your advice, go to the website that Mark has shared in the chat. Take a look at the projects, read which interests you, and Mark, is it true? Every single project will kind of have guidelines on how to get in touch and how to participate from there?
Yes, I won't let them on the site until they've made it very clear how to sign up. Yeah, so all of those
Perfect.
should be pretty clear how to participate from there.
Awesome. Well, Mark,
Anybody looking for a particular kind of project? I'm always fun to play matchmaker.
oh, see, and even reach out to Mark. He's more than happy to get you onto the right team with the right background and the right questions to make sure that you can contribute. Now, Mark,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I do have a technical question if you're ready for a technical
Sure.
question here. How does NASA ensure that data collected by citizen scientists is accurate and usable? And as part of this, because I've
Yeah.
downloaded data sets, not
Okay.
necessarily NASA curated ones, but I've downloaded data sets. It's a zip file. You open it up, and it's an absolute mess in there with minimal documentation. Are there any standards or things that you make sure the projects enforce?
So the best way that we have to do that is by beta testing. So before we put a project on our page, before we start advertising it, the project opens up to a limited group of participants and asks them to do the project, send us some data. That's all we're going to tell you. Just look at the materials that we've got out there, do your best.
Hmm.
And they take that data and they check and see whether it's useful or not. If it's not useful, they back to the drawing board. And that can sometimes happen 2 or 3 times where you'll do a beta test and you'll find out that the data quality is not good enough, you didn't explain it well enough, or the tool isn't accurate enough, or for whatever reason. So yeah, that's how we ensure necessary data quality.
Yeah. And now I'm curious, in the Q&A, we had a question asking about there's the I guess maybe a team had published some data and they still weren't able to make heads or tails in it. What are some remediation steps you would recommend for this individual?
A team had published the data and they still and someone else wasn't able to make heads or
Yeah, a
tails
citizen scientist wasn't able to make sense of the data that was
of the
published.
data that was published. Uh,
Should they just reach out to the
I
to
guess at
whoever's
that
in control
point,
of the data, the team that's controlling the data at that point?
I mean, at that point, somebody's messed up because it shouldn't have been published without,
Yeah,
you know, we have peer review, right? We have editors that are supposed to check that stuff. So I mean, mistakes happen. So I guess just,
absolutely. So get in touch
yeah,
and get to the bottom of it because by getting in touch and saying I couldn't make sense of this data,
yeah.
you're helping out the team to make sure that others don't have that same problem as well. It all feeds back into itself. Phenomenal. Well, Mark, speaking of some problems, I'm actually curious what some of the biggest challenges are in scaling up participatory science projects to
Yeah,
engage right on the scale of millions.
yeah. Good question. Um, the biggest one is having a human connection with a large collection of
Hmm.
people. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's where the value is, and that's where the effort's required. And it's hard. You have a small team of scientists, limited budget, um, and a lot of interested people. How do you connect meaningfully? And there's some techniques people have used that work pretty well. So I love Zoom calls. I
hmm,
just invite everybody to Zoom call and say, please mute your microphones and just try to get stuff done. And I think that's really fun. Other teams have had a lot of success on Slack.
Hmm.
Exoplanet Watch. This is a great project where people use their own telescopes to look at exoplanets, look at transits. So the star is getting dimmer because the planet's passing in front of it. Something you can observe with your own telescope. Uh, so they have a whole, all very active Slack community where people do real-time uh, work together.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not a problem that's unique to citizen science,
No, I
right?
was just about to say, a lot of the community building stuff I've done over the past couple of years, it's your goal is to make this community huge, but at the
Right.
same time, the bigger a community gets, the smaller it ends up feeling. And so I think you've done a good job at enumerating some tools to help keep that community feel right tight knit. And that's by having more forms of contact and more asynchronous options so you can talk around the world.
We had a cool presentation from a computer scientist at Brown University who had concocted a spreadsheet that was shared, collaborative spreadsheet, like Google Sheets. But this one's smart. It tells you when something happened in your row. It sends you an email. Somebody edited your row.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you'd like to do to that row?
And are you wondering, well, who's touching my row?
Exactly, exactly. So people are coming up with cool new ways to do it. I mean, Google's, made all these great collaboration tools. Zoom,
Mhm.
obviously. That's a major um, you know, development of our times is ways to collaborate. I mean, do you have any of those suggestions for tools? I'd love to hear what you guys come up with.
Mainly tooling just to keep interactivity high. And honestly, the hard part is even if you get everyone onto Slack, it's ensuring that it's active. And so just some mechanisms, you
Yeah.
honestly need to start just building a routine out around it as a community manager, right? You need to make sure you're posting in there once a day, if not twice a day. And you have to make sure that they're engaging posts, not just like, hey, right? It's not engaging. So you want to
Yeah.
pose specific questions, not broad, huge opinion questions, but specific, something that will just get interactions. And I find that always posting, images or something fun and lighthearted is also a great way to drive interaction and interactivity. And I think I've seen communities where they do channels where people post pictures of their pets, right? And there's a channel specifically
Yeah.
dedicated to
Yeah.
that. And it's like there's one thing where you know me and you see me in meetings, but you see a picture of my dog and you're like, oh, he loves his dog.
That's right. I mean, the same techniques that work in social media, right?
Mhm.
In fact, I've seen citizen science projects will use social media as their main collaborative tool. Like they'll have a Facebook group where everybody will get together.
That's very cool. Now, Mark, I did have a question. It's not related to scaling citizen science, but this is more from a citizen science perspective. This is what we got in the Q&A recently. The question reads, sometimes as a citizen science, I get this fear of making mistakes. And they provide an example of, making a mistake in
Yeah.
a classification project.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that we're doing the best we can to contribute to the community? And how do we alleviate that fear of, is one small mistake going to ruin it for the team?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of the big messages, one of the big lessons, if you like, about the nature of science that citizen science can offer is how science handles mistakes and checking that all of these projects are set up so that if there's one mistake, it'll get discarded. Someone will catch it.
Yeah.
And I think that projects have to be upfront and describe, hey, you're not going to be the only one looking at this, whatever it is, turtle, tree, supernova, whatever it is, there's 10 people who are going to look at it, right?
Yeah.
And so if you make a mistake, nine other people will override it. And I think project teams, I try to coach teams to share that they are have these built-in checks and balances. And then when participants get involved more deeply, they start having a glimpse into the deeper into the science process, where then there's peer review, right? Where
Hmm.
you want to write a paper, well, you got to get it by all the members of your team. It's got to run the
Hmm.
gauntlet. Everybody's got to put in their 2 cents about, um, how to make it better. And then it goes to a journal where there's an editor and a referee, and you go back and forth about that. And then it goes out to the scientific community, which dumps on it even further, if you're lucky, right? So I think that whole process of mutual checking is something that we will serve the world to communicate about through citizen
Yeah.
science.
I definitely agree. So I have a psychology background, right? And when I was training researchers or undergraduates to rate qualitative information, the big metric there for us was inter-rater reliability, right? Do the trained research assistants all consistently arrive at the same thing? And if you
Mm.
see an outlier, you know it's just that. So there are redundant checks. And I think at the end of the day, right, mistakes do happen. It's bound to happen and it's bound to slip through, and that's okay. Because a big part of the citizen science movement, right, you're being transparent, right, the whole step of the way. And that's something that's so different in contrast to how kind of the closed science system has been the last many, many decades, of where if you do make a mistake,
Yeah.
you can kind of cover it up by you put it in this nice looking PDF, right? The results
Uh-huh.
make sense, but nobody sees the data or the code that you plugged into it. And you
Right.
just kind of you publish it and you say, whew, I don't have to deal with that mess anymore.
That's right. That's right. It's 100% real, warts and all.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Mark, I do have one more question for you. And to round things out, I did want a broad impact question as well. And this, I think you'll have a story to share, but I am very curious. What do you find most rewarding about your role as NASA's citizen science officer? It could be a story or just general anecdotes. I'm really curious what your favorite part about all of this is.
I'll go for story. I think
Yeah.
that writing all the stories of the participants is just super motivating. So like I told you I'm working, on this event for veterans. So that's inspired because um, there was a super citizen scientist, right, who's participating in projects and he's just killing it, right? And I meet him at a scientific meeting, and I've known him for a year because he was outstanding. And so we talk shop for a while, right?
Mhm.
Then a later day of the meeting, he pulls me aside and says, Mark, I've known you for a while, but I never got to share this with you. When I started doing citizen science, I was homeless and I was an alcoholic and I was suffering from PTSD.
Wow.
And doing science with you and with everybody else helped me come out of my shell. And, it doesn't get any better than that,
No.
right? So, yeah, it's meeting people and hearing their stories. And isn't that what, brings richness to life in general, right?
Yeah, and I think it does such a good job of demonstrating, right, how citizen science just it transcends science in itself. It's not just the pursuit of knowledge that you get from participating in citizen science, right? You get community, friends, and people who are like-minded that you would not have met otherwise.
You're selling it for me.
Oh, you're selling it yourself. So, Mark, this has been an amazing, amazing hour. And I want to thank our audience for joining us today. Mark, before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or comments you want to share with our audience today? Or even how they can stay in touch with you?
Definitely stay in touch with me. I'll put my email in the chat, as they say, and come to our event tomorrow.
Awesome.
So
Well,
tomorrow we're gonna have, oh, is it okay?
yeah, please do. Please do.
So tomorrow we're going to have three experts who looked at gender in citizen science and particularly astronomy citizen science projects. So we know that there is some gender imbalance in participation statistics in citizen science, and it's different from biodiversity projects, for example, compared to space science projects. So we're going to take a deep dive into that, see if we can understand the problem better, and if we can be part of the solution. So come join us tomorrow.
Excellent. Well, you heard it here first. Check out Marc's event tomorrow. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us. My name is Cameron Riddell, and I've been joined by Dr. Marc Kutchner. This has been our fireside chat for citizen science. Thanks everyone for joining, and I hope to see you at an event real soon.